Hello, I'm Cuts Peasley, drummer and drum teacher in Seattle, Washington. And this is the first in a series of videos on the rudiments taught by Alan Dawson. I studied with Alan in the 1980s for about 2.5 years. In recent years, I've been going back and revisiting his teachings, repracticing old exercises, and in particular, relearning all the rudiments that I learned from him. All 86 rudiments and variations. 86, that's by John Ramsey's count. John Ramsey, the author of The Drummer's Complete Vocabulary, is taught by Alan Dawson. A great book. Hopefully, if you're interested in Alan Dawson's teachings in any way, hopefully you already know about this and you already have it. It's a great resource. John Ramsey has documented basically everything Alan was teaching his students. So highly recommend that. As I said, there's a lot of rudiments. Alan taught the familiar 26 American rudiments with, ruffs and paradiddles and such. He taught the Swiss rudiments. He taught the new innovations, as he called them. Then he taught something called chops builders. By that point, you're getting into some kind of obscure hybrid rudiments like flamma, flamma, flam, flam. Things like that, and much more. Now, many of you are probably familiar with the rudimental ritual, which was Alan Dawson's creation that allowed you to practice all these rudiments in one very efficient musical and fun exercise, about 15 minutes, give or take a few minutes, depending on the speed that you played it at. But it's worth noting that the ritual was not a way to learn the rudiments themselves. You had to learn them all individually first, to Alan's satisfaction, before he would show you the ritual, which was a way to practice them later. And the way you learned them was different than the way they're played in the ritual. Alan had you practice them in a slow, gradually to fast, and then gradually back down to slow approach. And it's that phase and it's that practice method that I wanted to dig into in these videos a little bit. I think that maybe it gets a little less attention than the ritual itself, but it's a mode of practicing that I found very beneficial, really great for me and my drumming. Also, I hope I'll be able to give a bit of a sense of Alan as a teacher through this. He was teaching, when he taught the rudiments, he was teaching on multiple levels, I think. There was a practical level. Certainly, rudiments and drumming go together. Drum set drumming, they've always gone together, and many of the rudiments that he taught could be applied to the drum set directly or indirectly, but I don't really think all 86 were there to be applied to the drum set. And certainly he never talked about that specifically. He didn't say, okay, we did the paradiddle diddle, now let's talk about how to apply it to the drum set. I don't recall him ever saying that. And in fact, he rarely told you what to play on the drums ever, to be honest. He provided exercises and studies that you would play that developed skills, but they weren't directly applicable to your drumming. They weren't comping patterns. They weren't solos really. Even the famous, the well-known interpretations of Ted Reed's syncopation, for example, or the interpretations of stick control, they're really dense and focused, and they're not really directly applicable. I think he really was not there to give you ideas. I don't recall him ever saying, here's a few comping patterns you might find useful. He didn't do that. I don't think he saw it as his job to give you ideas. He just wanted to give you the skills so that you would be able to play whatever ideas you had yourself. And I think it was similar with the rudiments that, some were applicable, but many, probably that wasn't the point. And I think the point another level was he was teaching musicality, a more general musicality. He always, there's a lot of focus on the sound of your sticks, listening carefully for evenness, fluidity, being very articulate with the accents and dynamics, and this sense of relaxation, or being relaxed while you played. So I think he was, trying to help develop the proficiency and technique that would allow you to then express yourself musically, basically, with the drums. So I want to keep that in mind going through these. Side note, I think there was also a life lesson, thinking about all 86 of these rudiments, a lesson on just patience and persistence. We all knew about the rudimental ritual. It was well known, and we were excited to learn it. But, you couldn't go download it off the internet or something like that. There was no internet, of course, in those days. You had to go study with Alan. You had to study for quite a while. I think bare minimum 9 to 10 months gave you enough lessons to learn them all. Easily a year or more in most cases, I think, in my case, for sure. No shortcuts. You had to learn each set well enough or you wouldn't move on. So if you hadn't prepared yours for that week, he'd send you back with it. It wouldn't give you the next set. So by the time you actually finished, if you did, and got to the ritual, it was a good lesson in persistence and how to tackle a long-term goal. Anyhow, with all that in mind, what I'd like to do is take these rudiments in small groups. Alan taught them in groups of 3 or so. That's all documented in Ramsey's book. And I'll demonstrate to the best of my ability in his style how he would demonstrate them, talk about them a little bit. I'll add some my own thoughts on the mechanics of things I've found helpful over the years for myself and my students. Probably talk a little more than Alan did about the mechanics, but he was thoughtful and analytical about teaching and drumming, so I think it's pretty much in the same spirit. Now, in some cases, I actually still have cassette tapes from my lessons. I wasn't able to keep all of them over these years, but I do have some. And so when I have Alan demonstrating a particular rudiment, I will play that as well. If not, I'll do my best. Now, a caveat, I'm not a rudimental drummer. Neither was Alan Dawson, for that matter, per se. And I'm certainly no Alan Dawson. So anything I'm playing here is not meant to be a prescription or the correct way to do this. I think there are many interpretations of the rudiments, and there are many reasons to learn the rudiments. This is just my take as a former Alan Dawson student, 40-ish years later, if you will. Okay, well, let's start where Alan started. He began with the 26 standard American rudiments. In particular, he started with 3 drag-related rudiments: the 3-stroke Ruff, the single drag, and the double drag. Now, the way it worked, you would come into his basement music room in Lexington, Massachusetts, and you'd sit down by his big round practice pad that was there, usually opposite him, and he would demonstrate your next set of rudiments on the pad. And he had asked you to get pitch-matched drumsticks so that you could better determine how even your left and right hands were playing. He also wanted you to tap your foot on each repeat of the rudiment. That helped you make sure you're playing the rudiment in the right meter, in the right position in a bar. Comes in more important later on when you have rudiments with sort of awkward accents or such. But it was an important part of how he wanted you to practice these. So the 3-stroke Ruff, logical one to start with. It's very short and introduces the little grace note, double grace note drag right from the beginning, which is very useful for many, many other rudiments. Let me demonstrate on the right side, then I'll stop and talk some about the mechanics, and then demonstrate the left side. So on the right side. So what's going on here? We've got the grace note on the left hand in this case. Alan would say, keep the grace notes low to the drum, or low to the pad. So when your stick is executing it, you don't want it coming from up here or something like that. Nice thing about this rudiment is it's just going to stay there the whole time. It doesn't have to change its stick height. So you're always nice and low to the drum with that. It can take a while to develop that nice clean little double rebound without a wind up like that. So it's a focus on grip, fulcrum, some light finger work there. He would kind of leave it up to you to figure that out. He talked about the grip and the basic fulcrums that you should develop. But you'd watch and learn from him. Now, incidentally, I played traditional. He did as well. But I had played that way before I studied with him. I don't think it's a requirement by any means to play traditional grip. Likewise, I played with a kind of an American grip over here. But again, there's lots of valid grips out there, so I'm not recommending any particular grip over another. The double is pretty closed in his teaching, so not real open, certainly not a set meter, like a 16th or 32nd note. It's closed right next to the other stroke, but it's a double, distinct double. Main thing is it's even. You don't want a gap like that. You don't want uneven. However you play it, whether it's kind of wide or just nice and even into the other stroke. I like to stay on the beat, to stay making sure that your grace note doesn't interfere with the pulse. You can kind of drop your hands together. You're just starting with the grace note hand is starting lower, so it hits the drum sooner. But it's kind of a single motion for a lot of this, if that's helpful. So on the left side, let's... All right. The next rudiment, the single drag. I've seen single drag tap. I've seen it called that, sort of. That usually involves an accent. Alan didn't teach this with an accent, but different rudiments, or same rudiments have different names. That happens quite a bit, I think. In any case, the way this is taught by Alan was a full stroke, or what I would call a full stroke, with the right hand. Then you've got three-stroke rough, sort of, but your sticks switch height. So that full stroke goes into a rough, but now you switch heights, and then you do the same thing on the left, full stroke, and then switch heights, and that's the whole thing. Initially, so it's written as a eighth note pattern, 1 and 2 and, but it's often played, especially up to speed, it's played in a more triplet feel, 1 and 2 and 1 triplet, 2 triplet. So I see that as kind of a swing feel or straight feel of the same written eighth notes. And for some reason I practice it starting straight time, and I kind of morph into the swing time to go faster and then switch on the way back down. Not sure if Alan did that. I think John Ramsey does that on his CD from the book. Anyhow, it seems to work for me. I'll demonstrate it that way for now. Main thing here is, you're listening for the difference in dynamics between your double. Well, you need a nice clean double, but then it should be going on at this low dynamic and the other notes are up at this higher dynamic. So let's see. About here I start to swing it. Straight feel. Now, a word about speed. Alan would start slow and he would go to his limit to demonstrate. And it was often kind of jaw-dropping how fast he could play some of these rudiments. It didn't mean go home and play it that fast. Obviously, he knew and he said it would take a long time to develop that speed. The main thing is always evenness, accuracy, and not going any faster than that, or pushing that ceiling just very little bit at a time to develop the speed. But the speed was a byproduct of practicing for accuracy and evenness and staying relaxed. The third rudiment in this set, the third and last, is the double drag. This introduces three dynamics now. So there's the grace notes, the regular notes, and the accented notes, or an accented note. So for me, that's three stick heights. I think a lot about stick height when I develop these and teach these. Stick height meaning, at least at a slow speed, if you can get your stick set up to the height it needs to be for the following stroke as early as possible, then that's the efficient way to get dynamics without a lot of extra motion. And so it's really about after a stroke, what's the movement to get the stick to the height it needs to be for the following one. And this generally works at the slowest speeds up to a certain point. And after that point, a couple things happen. For one thing, my brain gives out. I can't keep track of that. It's too fast to keep track of it. The other thing is that the sort of direct non-molar move the stick tip to a certain height naturally kind of gives way to some molar motion where you're lifting the butt of the stick and early, and then you at the last minute you're whipping the stick around. So, and that works for me. Like at that point, I'm not really thinking. If I set it up explicitly at the lower tempos, things tend to sort of take care of themselves nicely at the higher tempos, as long as I'm listening to the dynamics at that point and just keying in really closely on, do I hear the dynamics that I want? Let me demonstrate how this works with this rudiment for me. So it starts with a 3-stroke Ruff, and then there's that switch pattern from the single drag, although this time a little higher on the other hand to get ready for an accented, and then that's a full stroke accented back to a normal height, and then back around. So starting very slow like that, and the time is in a 3 times 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 3, something like this. 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. All right. See you in the next video for the next 3 rudiments.